Namaskar. Today is the 22nd of June, Tuesday, and welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree, episode number 187. We begin with global news. And in global news today, the president-elect of Iran will not meet with Biden and is sticking to militias and ballistic programs and hardline stance, while the White House vows to hold Iranian president accountable for all human rights violations. Good morning, Sridharji, and what do you make of this news?
Uh, well, first and foremost, I think that this was consistent. This is expected. First, on Biden's statement, which is to say that's the line that they have followed. If you recall the statement of Antony Blinken, he said, "We don't have plans. Would you like to give a percentage? I can't say." So there's a consistent pattern that they're following, which is namely, we have no immediate plans to confront China over Code. So, what do they have a plans at all? I don't believe they have a plan. While they say that, Kevin McCarthy says, I have a plan. And we in we Republicans have come out with a plan to hold China accountable. And we have a roadmap. And here's a sequence of 8 steps that we will take, from discovery, identification, imposing specific sanctions on people associated with the lab, assessing what grants we were giving, stop funding the grants, etc., etc. And then before we start imposing the bans. If you ask President Trump if he was in power, what would he do? He would say that we would impose a $10 trillion fine, and we will make sure that we deduct that money from the debt that countries owe, and we tell China those debt is canceled. That's what President Trump would do. Okay, let China go to hell in terms of where they're going to recover that from. So what does China do? Okay, China reacts and says, I'm going to award 2 lady scientists, or 2 scientists, we call them the Bat Women. This is the Chinese National Science Academy, and we are going to give them an award which is equivalent to either the Academy of Sciences Award, or which is the Nobel Prize, which is to say outstanding contribution to sciences, award we're going to give it to these 2 people. You can see the contrarian position, how divided and polarized the world is. China is really exploiting the lack of leadership in the world to confront it head on.
And Iran nuclear power plant undergoes unexplained emergency shutdown. The plant is located in the port city of Bushehr, built with Russian help. So this is the second time that that a nuclear plant is shut down.
It is, and apparently there was some. This is in the Bushehr region of on the northern side, and it has been shut down. And we don't have. There's no rhyme or reason. It's also possible that this particular plant may be going through. Apparently, the rods which is used for refueling must be sent to Russia, and it is done with Russian collaboration before it is enriched and sent back. It's possible some such activity is going on in the region, so therefore that's what is causing the problem.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un vows to be ready for confrontation with US and Biden administration as it offers to meet with the Korean leader anytime with no preconditions. Again, this person hasn't been doing anything, hasn't been saying anything. Why go and needlessly offer to negotiate with him, sir? What is the logic behind that?
The logic behind that is to demonstrate to the world that for every policy of Trump, Biden has an equal policy to battle against, right?
Opposite, yeah.
Right. So therefore, you took the words out of my mouth. So what does Mr. Kim Jong-un say? I'm here. I'm ready to confront Mr. Biden, and I can take him apart. Russians have done it. The Chinese have done it. The Turkish have done it. How come I haven't got my turn? I'm ready. So what does Mr. Biden do? Well, I'm very happy to meet with the North Korean leader, but I don't want to have any preconditions, and I'll meet them at any time. What's he going to kind of discuss? Denuclearize Korean Peninsula. And this gentleman is going to say, what's in it for me? For me to stop playing with my toys, because it's the toys that keeps me distracted and busy while the people are suffering. and I play around and create nonsense around. So I think this is going to be the outcome, just as the outcome that we got from at least Russia. I feel that, notwithstanding positive and negative adverse press, something has come out. You're not going to change on Ukraine. You're not going to change on Crimea, but at least there may be room around this gas, oil, energy prices, plus, of course, the ransomware attacks. There may be some progress. But the moment Navalny issue props up, Russia is going to say, pull back. So with North Koreans, the key is with the Chinese, not with anyone else. So unless you give a key to Kim Jong, that's what President Trump did. He says, okay, you stay there. You want few things, you have, but don't put anything into the water, or don't put at the other side of the border. If you do so, then we will act, because we got lots of things around the ocean, and we will try to create problem for you. He seems to have listened. So that enforcement deterrence is not there in the foreign policy of Mr. Biden. There is no deterrence. Right now, there is some modicum of that is visible only in Taiwan, nowhere else.
And Myanmar junta chief woos Russia with a Moscow trip, and the United States is planning more Russia sanctions over Navalny poisoning. I think we referred to this yesterday, that there could be additional sanctions coming Russia's way, and I think it has come out true. So as always, nobody is going to give us the credit. We'll have to take it ourselves. We predicted it. Your thoughts?
Indeed, it's good. I think we probably are doing. We have done. This is what, our 187th or 187th show. So therefore, we have reasonable predictability in terms of data, plus of course insights that flow with the data. So no surprise there that there is more sanctions coming on the Russian front. My concern with more and more sanctions going in is, what is it going to do to OPEC and oil prices? Because that's a very combative weapon that Russia can use, and we'll cover that in a bit in the market section. Anyway, on the Myanmar side, it's a very well-known fact that Russia and China are, proactive supporters of the Myanmar junta. And that has been the case from time immemorial, until they got integrated into ASEAN and became mainstream, and we began to see South Korean, Japanese, and other types of investments. So these are despotic regimes or military regimes. You just don't shake with all this democracy kind of stuff. Just allow them to make its case, or you have sufficient deterrence measures to enforce. If you have China and Russia, now Turkey part of this triangle, new power triangle, then all these countries get away by playing one against the other.
And a top US general warns of wildfire of terrorism across Africa. This is something that has been talked about a little bit before, but now it is beginning to start taking front and center stage. We now have some congresswomen from these areas who are representing the American interests also. They become what is partly called as a squad. And surely they should be able to guide the American opinion properly. What are your thoughts? Is it going to be that way, or is it going to be the opposite, where Biden administration came in, lifted sanctions on some of these countries? More of them will now flee into the United States, citing refugee status. In fact, the United States has rejoined UNHCR, which Trump had not had pulled it out of because of the indiscriminate. I have to say this thing, people don't even know how many people came in during the Obama administration who got refugee status and then came in. And now, of course, Biden has given open season. People were not even checked for what their citizenship was. They were allowed to cross the border from south. And people say something going south is going bad. Here it is going north, and it is going bad for America. I don't know your thoughts, sir. Where does this lead everything to?
I think it leaves everything to potential hotspot areas of terrorism and threat. This is the head of the U.S. African Command, Mr. Townsend, making his observations around what he defines as, or what we call as, the Sahel, S-A-H-E-L, Sahel region, which is a combination of 10 countries stuck right in the middle. Um, you know, uh, North Africa stretching from east to west. East is basically from Somalia going down into South Sudan, across Nigeria into Burkina Faso, Mali, Algiers, and going all the way into Liberia and so on. So what's happened is these 10 countries have become the hotspot for the new branch of, or these new wings, or the old wings to take shelter in this specific region, especially after the liberation of Libya and the Burkina Faso, Mali, Algiers, and what you call the Niger crisis. Then you have had warlords fighting, which we covered in that region. So what they're now saying is that apart from Boko Haram, which is in Nigeria, you have Al Shabaab, you have the Al Qaeda, you have the Islamic State, we have Nusrati Jamin. So you have all these different groups have taken shelter. They're effectively running the local administration in this new region. So it's no longer the North Africa or the West Africa, which is the threat, or the Middle East, but it is the new Sahel region where there is this freedom of terror that is running the reign in these parts of the world. They basically, children are being what you call radicalized. The men and women are forced and compelled to follow the rules of the game. I mean, if you want an example, everybody should know what happens in Boko Haram in Nigeria, or what happens in South Sudan region. Of course, you have seen the warlords fighting. So if this is the region, more importantly, okay, the terrorism is developing, terror threats. What does this mean? I think you set the stage and set the context by stating that we have people from here, who have interest, people from United States who have interest. So all these, some of these areas, which originally were in the no-fly list, where people were not allowed to come because potentially a security threat. Now all those doors are open. Visa processing, flights have started. Of course, COVID may have restrictions, but the flights are likely to start very soon whenever the COVID opens up. So potentially, along with the surges that is happening across the border, we have a new threat, which is the emerging security threat. Now, if you dip further, then you go into Afghanistan. You know what's happening in the Afghanistan. We covered that yesterday. So this is what they're alluding to and warning. It's like a line item which appears, but we are highlighting it because it could have a significance in the days to come.
Singapore's COVID-19 breath tests give the results within 2 minutes, and Singapore questions the efficacy of Sinovac. So now again, one more country questioning the efficiency of the Chinese vaccine Sinovac. A top medical advisor says no fans, safest for Tokyo Olympics. So fan means that if you use the fan, then the breath starts spreading around. Is that why the doctor is advising this?
Well, I think the quarantine programs, the test programs, plus there is a audience. This is we are on the threshold of rising cases of COVID in Southeast Asia and East Asia, right? So under these circumstances, when you have Indonesia, when you have Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, even Taiwan, rising cases, these are all the neighboring countries around Japan. When the flights are restricted from many parts of the world, these are the adjacent nations potentially from where flights can be open and people coming into Japan as tourists. So they're saying that this is the last thing that we want, especially, we just are in the process of accelerating the vaccination program preceding Olympics. We don't even know whether we're going to complete dose one, let alone dose one and dose two. Under these circumstances, if we want to conduct the Olympics, better to conduct the Olympics and people can all watch it. Just like you have Zoom sessions and online sessions, you can have even Zoom sessions plus the television. So television maybe broadcast only some components. So you can begin to use private broadcast as well to give that personalized touch from an Olympics point of view.
And now let's take a look at the United States news. Biden administration says that there are no immediate plans to confront China over COVID-19. This after the new revelations that a very senior Secret Service official may have defected along with his daughter into the United States in February 2021 with terabytes of data. This is new emerging news. We'll keep you posted on that. But I just wanted Sridharji to answer it in the backdrop of all these revelations coming. What are your thoughts? Why is the Biden administration so hesitant, sir? And Kevin McCarthy has laid out a plan for the House Republicans to hold China accountable for coronavirus pandemic and a roadmap that includes 8 steps that the Congress can take. Now, on the contrary, China nominates Wuhan lab Batwoman for outstanding science award. This you alluded to, but I'm just questioning the Biden administration's sudden reticence in moving against China. I mean, this is just 3 days ago, I think we reported that Biden wants US to get to the bottom of what happened to the source of the virus.
The enforceability of Biden administration based on all the bilateral discussions that has taken place is quite clearly absent. The best way to characterize Mr. Biden, at least right now, is what Mr. Vladimir Putin said. You know, Mr. Biden is great. He is like a career worker, but his Machao is fake, and he is not a strong person. So therefore, he's, so we're going to deal along those terms. So that is by Vladimir Putin himself in a national broadcast on NBC channel here in the United States, Monday preceding Monday preceding the summit. So what you're witnessing here is people sensing a weakness in administration. There's probably one of the progressive measures which basically says, look, I'm soft, compassionate, accommodative, and so on and so forth. So he is afraid. Why to ruffle the feathers and create a problem? Possibly that's what his policymakers are saying. And, United States is borrowing like nobody's business. We're going to have $6 trillion budget every year for the next 4 years. So which means we have to borrow. So under these circumstances, you have supply chain disruptions, import disruptions, you have confrontation in South China Sea, then you have a confrontation in COVID. Whether you will get a world consensus in United Nations or somebody will veto it to impose sanctions in China. These are all the questions that must be weighed. Linda Thomas, who is the United Nations ambassador, is considered to be soft on China if you are going to take United Nations as a vehicle. This came up in the hearings as well. So when you put all these things together, why anybody thinks that Biden administration is going to be strong on COVID?
As if all this is not enough, here comes another shocker. Commerce Secretary and her husband own stakes in WeChat parent company, even as United States now rescinds the decision on WeChat and TikTok bans imposed by President Trump in September last year. This news here says reviews, but we believe that is already been done. Sir, this is screaming at me conflict of interest, conflict of interest, conflict of interest. How can the Commerce Secretary, first of all, that Commerce Secretary should have sold all the stakes. Second of all, now it's basically batting for the opposition here. It is very, very strange. I don't understand what US politics is stooping to. I'm very disappointed. What are your thoughts, sir?
My thoughts are this again came up during Gina Raimondo's hearings in the Senate. She weaned away. Basically, it was established that WeChat and TikTok. Remember, India banned this, whole swag of applications because there's a lot of data that is collected out of this. Is what you call transaction downloads. There's a lot of data that is collected. The ban related to that, therefore, the usage of the applications. So, therefore, now we are saying we're going to rescind it. Nobody knows whether it collects data also on a real-time basis and sends it, but it is possible because it's a WeChat or a TikTok. So under those circumstances, you rescind the latest, the breaking, it's rescind. The decision is rescinded. So therefore, you can now go and get your WeChat and TikTok. So the question is, whichever way you go, whether you go towards Hunter Biden, whether you go towards Salzwell, or whether you go towards Gina Raimondo, whether you go everywhere there seems to be conflict of interest, some association and engagement with China in some way or the other. So under those circumstances, you're going to see more and more such decisions coming to main light. There's somebody said this very well, and we covered this in Daily Global Insights, which is to say, if Trump's policy was X, my policy is going to be Y. If Trump's policy was ban all, oil drilling and energy pipelines, leases, etc., Biden's policy would have been no climate accord. We are going to allow all these things to happen. So that is why Trump banned it. We are going to oppose it. So very stupid decision and very regrettable.
And the Democratic frontrunner, Nina Turner, in Ohio has special ties to controversial activist Linda Sarsour, while the Democratic candidate Matthew Putorti, who's standing against Ellie Stefanik, the RNC chair, is registered as a foreign agent of Qatar. Wow, this is amazing. Linda Sarsour has links with Palestine, isn't it?
Yes, she has links with some of the countries that you alluded to, and it seems like the progressive groups have a very strong agenda of getting their people in and getting their policies in, and these policies are not reflective of what the United States locally needs here, but seems to be of United States policies towards those countries outside of United States. That is the reason why we have COVID-19 aid going to all countries outside in conjunction with aid being granted here. Now imagine if you have, you have names ranging from Ilhan to Rashida to others who all have sympathy towards specific countries. Now, we are going to have Nina Turner joining that, so there is going to be probably more additions coming into the play. And then you add the liberal New York practicing lawyer, Mr. Matthew Putorti, who has registered relationship with Qatar. So what you're beginning to now see is an emergence of a pattern within the administration. The present administration in terms of where we are heading. I really see two major problems. One is a domestic problem. The second problem is what's going to happen to the foreign policy, and more important, what's going to happen to Israel. Because Israel is one of the countries that is maximum impacted by some of the decisions and some of the actions that are going on within the United States.
And the Supreme Court of United States sides with athletes and rejects the NCAA compensation limits. This is a very good decision in my opinion, sir, and I'll let you answer right after I make the next announcement also. A transgender athlete, Chelsea Wolfe, who qualified to represent US in the BMX freestyle event, has threatened to burn the US flag on the medal stand. I think this is Olympics. And a federal judge rules that BLM cannot sue President Trump over Lafayette Square. Now, taken together, these are all elements who are still continuing to create riots and trouble and what have you. And I think though burning the flag is not an act of sedition under US law, it is really puts a very a poor image of the country on world stage, is my opinion, sir. I don't know what you think.
Well, I think firstly, Olympics is supposed to be binding countries and nations together in a single harmony, as a harmony. It's the podium is an occupation, is a reflection of the contribution of an athlete hailing from a nation and recognition of it. So somebody to go into that podium and burn the flag when the flag is raised just speaks for itself. We don't need to elaborate on the comment. And she's quite, Chelsea Wolfe, who is a transgender athlete, is making the observation her whole goal of contesting and getting selected is to get on the podium and burn US flag. The less said, the better, but it is a very what you call um, highly disrespectful and highly disgraceful and most unwarranted outcome from an athlete who is trying to compete and represent her nation. Why would you want to represent a nation when you have such? You can start. You can be here and burning the flags. You cannot be representing a nation, right? So therefore, it's just very contradictory and very disgraceful. As far as the NCAA is concerned, this was long overdue. In fact, I read the many parts of the ruling. They went on to say, one show you make $16 million in, for example, in the March Madness. Each of your commissioners and deputy commissioners have salaries ranging from $5 million to $3 million, plus you have other bonuses. And then you are saying the athletes who compete, right, cannot be given and there should be a ceiling because that preserves the ecosystem. They said those are the guys who are feeding you, and you are telling that they cannot be paid. Okay, if they want to come in Lamborghini to their college, this is exactly the words. They want to come in Lamborghinis, stop that. But you're not going to stop them from earning money and having, a house, tuitions and other kinds of things. So give them a decent earning, and you cannot impose conditions on the compensation. So therefore, it's a great victory for the athletes, and it's a great victory for those people. It's like scholarships, expanded scholarships, because they deserve, because at the end of the day, right? So therefore, today there's nothing that bars people from work and study either. Nothing, right? When you work, you pay taxes. So when you earn money, you pay taxes within the construct of the system. So I think it's a great outcome, sir.
And sir, many in the United States say that watching NCAA basketball is the real thing, because every one of those games is treated by the players as their last game, because they need to break into the highest level, which is the NBA, and for that they need to put in their 100% effort. And therefore, I think it is only fair that they also be rewarded for all the risks they are taking. So for some, if they can't break into the uppermost tier, that's it. There's nothing else they can do, because this is their only skill set to survive in the world. So let's wish the best of luck for the NCAA athletes, and I'm looking forward to the next March Madness. So moving on, unvaccinated Americans risk losing jobs, potentially setting up another legal challenge. Democrats are trying to short circuit the big tech legislation. So a little bit expansion on what the big tech legislation is. Is it that the government is trying to break up some of these big companies like Facebook and so on?
I think the government is not only, there are two components to it. One is a breakup. The second element, which is associated with, is some element of rules. They won't remove the specific article that gives them the unilateral indemnity, right? So today they have a unilateral indemnity against any litigation. India has led the world. Russia has followed suit, and many other countries are following. Singapore has followed suit. Many countries are now saying, hey, we will, Florida has followed suit. Forget anybody. Florida has basically said there is a liability restriction of up to $100,000 in terms of litigating, suing these things if there is an unfair treatment that is meted out to them. In fact, in many instances, unfair. So you will begin to see some calibration of the law associated with that, because both Democrats and Republicans, this is bipartisan, are united that if Republicans are in power, maybe the Democrats get the wrong end of the stick, or if the Democrats are in power, they still get the wrong end of the stick. So there may be a legislation around that. So these are the two things. One is split up. The second is the recalibration of the indemnity plus the rules for managing the content.
And Biden awaits details of a bipartisan infrastructure plan and will meet lawmakers this week, while announcing that families will receive child tax credit payments from next month. Biden says that he's eyeing the expansion of Obamacare in the $6 trillion budget. Now, Democrats have started to draft a budget resolution bill that would allow them to pass the bill without a GOP vote. I think we should look at what Joe Manchin is going to do on this. And the voters are not sold on the Democrats' 800-page plus rewrite of election laws. Bill appears to be doomed in Senate. Looking together at all these three news items, your thoughts, do you think that the infrastructure bill, that the dreams of Biden of 2 trillion is going to pass now? Is Joe Manchin going to change his mind? Your thoughts, sir.
My thoughts are very simple. Democrats have their votes. They can burst the filibuster. Harris will vote, and the progressives will have their way. So they have already drafted the resolution. Progressives will have all this drama will soon come to an end. If it is not, then what they would do is they will pass one bill and then they will use the executive order, or they will use the back end process in terms of getting the rest of the components. There is no way that they're going to get away from all those things. The climate accord bill that people are talking about is basically to have a huge segment of money to pay, maybe to feed 1, 2, 2.5, 3 million people in United States, so they become a captive vote bank. I'm sorry, I'm calling it that way. If you have data to prove the other way, you come back and tell us that the data is the other way. But this is money, countless pool of money that is being allocated, funded from taxpayers, because you have to pay taxes to pay for it. We'll do that in a separate kind of a fireside chat session once the 6 trillion and 2.25 trillion is announced. Then we will do a special budget coverage where we will tell it's not 400,000, it's everybody from 75,000 is going to pay a tax.
And in India related news, India achieves the highest ever single day tally of 8.096 million doses for a total number of doses of 283 million. Indian team reaches the United States for training on MH-60R submarine hunting helicopters, and Indian Railways successfully completes trial of the first double stack container from Mundra port to Concord MMLP in Rajasthan, and Samsung moves its display manufacturing unit from China to India with the completion of construction work. So with your permission, first let me put up the chart with respect to the COVID achievement that India has done. Very impressive, sir. I have it up now. Please go ahead.
Well, I think that, sorry, I have to use my, if you don't mind.
Yes.
The chart. So the numbers are very impressive because you can see that the dispersion of the numbers. But what I find very conspicuous is Madhya Pradesh leads the number of vaccine doses that is given, which is around 1.371 million. Then, not to fall behind, you have pretty close to million from Karnataka. Then you go to the next, which is namely Uttar Pradesh. That's got about 631,000 vaccines. Then you go to Gujarat, which has got 486,000. Then you go to Haryana, which is 450. Then you go to Bihar, which has 423. The net sum, when you look at that pie chart, when you look at the chart, you find that most of this, almost close to 60% of this, is coming from BJP ruled states. Is there some hesitancy on the part of the Congress ruled states, which especially Maharashtra has 368,000? It's one of the big states. Punjab is another one. Tamil Nadu has got only 296. I'm sure you will pick this up in your Ask Karthik show.
Yes.
Yeah, right. You'll pick this up there. So you find that it's quite astonishing, but great progress by India. 8.096 million vaccine doses is a remarkable number. The number seems to have slightly updated, and it seems they're saying now it's 8.6 million. If that's the number, well, India is not too far from vaccinating 10 million people. Already 8 million is huge. 10 million would be an outstanding number for a country that was blamed. One important data that I want to leave. India is the country which is producing the highest number of vaccines, higher than United States. India has got a domestic vaccine program. India has also exported to more countries than any other nation. It has exported more vaccines to many countries besides its own consumption. So clearly showing the way that India is capable, just if you have to give it a little bit of time. Yes, you have mismanagement, logistics, politics, all kinds of issues that one can think of. for a country that is 1.3 billion people. But a great job.
And I have the Concord MMLP Corridor project, sir. Maybe you can mention a little bit about what has been doing about the railway's accomplishment.
See that's a great chart. But what there are three important elements. Is one is the existing freight line. The second is the final DFC, which is the dedicated freight corridor alignment, because we have dedicated freight corridors. We talked about that. That is used both for army purposes as well as for the freight, plus also for carrying other types of manufactured goods. What this does is that India is now moving into what you call as multi-nodal logistical facility or multi-nodal logistical corridor, which is effectively implies that many of the locations will have capabilities basically to store various types of goods according to the way they are transported. They're transported by freight, they're transported by sea, they're transported by air, they're transported by train. So they're building the facilities and connecting them. They're also connecting them via what they call as the nodal routes, which is the adjacent, which connects to the ports or other areas. The one good example is um, you know, uh, the connection, the blue lines that reflect the connections into Gujarat, the blue lines that connect into Maharashtra from the main corridor. So India is at least getting its act together. Multinodal logistical facility is not new, but many countries which have a very effective transportation system, most advanced is United States, most advanced is also Europe. China has built enormous facility. It's good to see that India is also falling in line as it moves towards capabilities that spawns more than one specific sector and getting the infrastructure of the country growing.
And on the economic front, India will be left with the inevitable choice of stimulus to address inflation, low growth, and possible capital outflows. This again is one of the concerns that we have been raising. We've had many fireside chats where we have mentioned this. Sir, your thoughts, where do you think India should be concentrating next in terms of its economy, sir?
In terms of its economy, very clearly the consumption sector is impacted. So therefore, really that they have to put more funds into the consumption sector. The exports have done well. The manufacturing sector requires some amount of capital inflows from an impetus point of view. Lot of money has come from external FPI and external capital. We have quoted that number, $82 billion. In case there is an outflow, that gap needs to be filled in. There is a divestment program or a divestment program that is going on, that has been launched by India, especially around the gas and energy sector. They want to do 100% FDI. My feeling is that the capital that is coming in will be redeployed. Also, they have to address the rural jobs, the rural economy. Rural jobs needs to be addressed in conjunction with the health infrastructure, because the reason is the wave 3 is almost inevitable based on what you are seeing here. So this is the time for them to get the healthcare infrastructure to the next phase rather than be confronted with the same challenge that they had in the wave 2. Wave 1, they got away because it was not very catastrophic in its spread, but wave 2 was highly contagious. India was caught short. So they built the capabilities, but the healthcare services continue to need to be expanded. If there's one more sector, I would say agriculture. Again, agriculture has grown, but these are times where I have seen pictures and photographs of many, like yield of tomatoes being thrown away, right? When it can be preserved and productized with collaboration with some of the foreign countries, rather than everything being thrown because the prices came down. These are areas I think that they need to deploy capital to preserve what they produce, and not only preserve, but make sure that it is consumed at a price.
And in markets news, markets roar back as the Dow rallies 580 points for the best day since March, and it is shedding all the fears of inflation. Dow finished up plus 586 points, S&P up 53 points, Nasdaq up 111 points. With the rise of inflation, would oil hit $100 a barrel? It's a definite possibility. Your thoughts, Sridharji, and this is the last news item for the day before we call it a wrap.
Thank you. I think we touched on this in terms of the power that OPEC has. Now, this is the best time for them as the markets open, the economy gains momentum. When there is a possibility of a consumption, the best thing that you do is to raise the oil prices. So therefore, you can't do lots of enforcement. Already we have both Brent as well as the oil toggling between $72 to $74 or $75. So $100 next year, my bet is inevitable.
With that, we bring our today's consignment of DGI to a close. We'll be back again tomorrow, bright and early. Thanks for joining. Namaskar, and do subscribe to our channel.
Thanks, Namaskar. Have a good day. I know it's been a long session today, 40 minutes, but thanks for your patience and listening to us.
Yes, there is so much to cover today. Thank you very much, sir.